The tragic death of Charlie Kirk. What we know, what we fear, what it means. Charlie Kirk was a name many people knew, a voice that carried power in political halls, on college campuses, and across social media platforms. He was young, passionate, and controversial. He built a career around sharp debate and standing firmly in the beliefs that shaped him. On September 10, 2025, everything changed. That day will be remembered not for another political event, not for another fiery speech, but for tragedy. Charlie Kirk died after being shot while speaking at Utah Valley University. His death has left a wound in American politics and ignited a storm of questions. How could such a thing happen in a place that is supposed to celebrate free speech and intellectual debate? Who was behind the attack? What motivated them? And perhaps most importantly, what does it mean for the rest of us who live in a society where words and ideas should never be answered with bullets? In this story, we will uncover the full chain of events, every verified detail, the lingering questions that remain, and the broader implications for political discourse in America. Background on Charlie Kirk. Charlie Kirk was not just another political commentator. He was a conservative activist, an author, and a prominent media personality. He co-founded Turning Point USA, an organization focused on engaging students and young people with conservative ideas. His influence extended across campuses, social media feeds, and political conferences. He became a symbol of the new wave of youth-driven conservatism in the United States. He was known for his provocative speeches, for his confidence in debates, and for openly challenging his opponents without hesitation. To his supporters, he represented courage, clarity, and conviction. To his critics, he was often seen as divisive, someone who thrived on stirring up controversy. But even those who disagreed with him admitted he was effective, charismatic, and influential. He believed that the conservative voice was too often silenced in academic spaces, and his mission was to amplify it. Kirk's style was direct. He did not soften his words, and he did not attempt to appeal to everyone. That directness made him both a powerful leader for some and a lightning rod for others. In his early 30s, he had already built a legacy, becoming a regular guest on television, radio, and podcasts. His events drew large crowds, sometimes filled with support, sometimes marked by heated protests. He was never afraid to take a stand, even when he knew it would be unpopular. That willingness to enter hostile spaces became both his strength and, tragically, the context for his death. What was the event? On September 10, 2025, Charlie Kirk was speaking at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah. This was not just another stop. It was part of what he called the American Comeback Tour. The event was planned to be both engaging and confrontational, with a question and answer format designed to spark dialogue with students. Nearly 3,000 people attended, filling the auditorium and surrounding spaces. Some came as loyal supporters eager to hear him speak, while others came prepared to challenge him. Security was present, but it was not heavy. Private guards and a handful of local law enforcement officers were scattered around. There were no metal detectors, no strict barriers, and ticketing was only loosely enforced. In many ways, it felt like a typical campus event. Open, somewhat casual, but charged with energy. That atmosphere, however, also meant that vulnerabilities existed. Kirk was known for diving into heated topics, and on this day he was expected to address some of the most pressing issues in the nation: free speech, political polarization, and violence. Students, professors, and community members were there. Some expected fireworks in the form of debate. No one expected the gunfire that followed, the moment of tragedy. Approximately 20 minutes into the event, at around 12:23 p.m., Kirk was in the middle of answering a student's question. The question was about mass shootings in the United States, one of the most contentious issues in American society. The student asked, "Do you know how many mass shooters there have been in America over the last 10 years?" Kirk paused and responded, "Counting or not counting gang violence." It was a typical moment for him. Sharp, quick, meant to reframe the conversation. Then, in the next instant, everything changed. A single rifle shot rang out, echoing across the auditorium from outside. The shot was fired from the roof of a nearby building, approximately 142 yards away. The bullet struck Kirk in the neck. He collapsed instantly. For the crowd, the world turned upside down. Screams erupted. People ducked, rushed for cover, or froze in confusion. Panic spread like fire. Many believed more shots were coming, but there was only one, some cried. Others pulled out their phones. A few brave souls rushed toward Kirk to try to help. That moment, when a heated debate turned into a scene of chaos and blood, will remain etched in the memories of all who were present. Immediate response. After the shot, the scene was one of disorder. Security scrambled. Attendees cried out for help. A small group of men acted quickly, lifting Kirk and rushing him to safety. 6 of them carried him to an SUV that was used as an emergency transport vehicle. They did not wait for an ambulance, fearing that every second was crucial. Within minutes, Kirk was being driven to Timpanogos Regional Hospital. At the hospital, doctors rushed him into surgery. Medical staff worked frantically to save him, fighting against the damage caused by the high-powered rifle round. Outside the hospital, word spread quickly. Supporters gathered. Reporters began to call. Police established barricades. But inside the operating room, the battle was already lost. Later that afternoon, Kirk was pronounced dead. He was just 31 years old. For many, disbelief gave way to grief. For his supporters, it was devastating. For his critics, it was still shocking, a moment when political disagreements were overshadowed by human tragedy. Across the nation, the story broke and dominated headlines. The United States had just witnessed the assassination of one of its most recognized conservative voices. Investigation begins. Law enforcement launched an immediate and massive investigation. The FBI, ATF, and local police combined forces to secure the scene and begin gathering evidence. Surveillance cameras from multiple angles were collected and reviewed. Witnesses were interviewed on the spot. The rooftop from which the shot was fired was identified as the Lucy Center, a building on the university campus. Investigators found signs of careful preparation, footprints, palm prints, and DNA traces left behind. The shooter had carried a rifle to the roof unnoticed. That rifle, a Mauser-type bolt-action hunting rifle chambered in .30-06 caliber, was later found discarded in nearby woods. It had been wrapped in a towel and left with a small cache of other items. Investigators also discovered something chilling: several bullet casings left at the scene, some spent and some unused. They were not ordinary casings. Each one bore strange engravings, as if the shooter wanted to leave behind messages or symbols. Those details would soon become central to understanding the mindset of the person behind the attack. Evidence details: bullets and inscriptions. The engraved bullet casings shocked investigators. They were bizarre, disturbing, and deeply confusing. One casing bore the phrase, "Notices bulges, oh, what is this?" a reference to internet meme culture. Another casing carried the words, "Hey fascist! Catch!" which referenced a video game controller combination linked to bombing sequences. Others were engraved with song lyrics such as, "Oh Bella Siao Bella Siao Bella Siao Siao Siao," a historic protest anthem. One even carried the mocking phrase, "If you read this, you are gay LMAO." These inscriptions seemed almost surreal, blending internet culture, mockery, and ideology into one disturbing artifact. For investigators, the casings suggested not only planning but a strange attempt at leaving behind a digital era manifesto, written not in a notebook or online post, but on the very ammunition itself. What motivated such behavior? Was it ideology, performance, or madness? The casings left more questions than answers. They also confirmed one terrifying fact: the shooter was not only deliberate but wanted to be remembered. Identifying the suspect. 2 days after the shooting, on September 12, 2025, police made an arrest. The suspect was identified as 22-year-old Tyler James Robinson, a Utah native. He was recognized when his father saw surveillance footage released by authorities and contacted law enforcement. Robinson lived in St. George, Utah, and was working as an electrical apprentice. He had once enrolled at Utah State University but had dropped out after only 1 semester. Family members later revealed that Robinson had spoken critically about Charlie Kirk before the event. In fact, one relative told investigators that Robinson had specifically discussed Kirk's planned appearance at Utah Valley University. The arrest shocked many who knew him. To neighbors, Robinson appeared quiet, reserved, and largely unremarkable. But beneath that surface, there were clear signs of frustration, ideological resentment, and possible radicalization. Authorities began piecing together his history, his movements, and his online activity to understand how a young man had turned into a political assassin. Evidence linking suspect to crime scene. The case against Robinson quickly gathered strength as investigators pieced together a trail of evidence that connected him to the shooting with striking precision. The most compelling discovery came when a rifle was recovered from a wooded area not far from the crime scene. Wrapped around the weapon was a towel, and forensic testing revealed Robinson's DNA embedded in the fibers. For investigators, this was not a coincidence but a direct indication that he had handled the weapon. This evidence was further supported when a screwdriver, found abandoned on the rooftop of the building, believed to be the shooter's vantage point, also tested positive for his DNA. The presence of 2 separate items, both carrying his genetic material, provided investigators with a powerful link tying him physically to the crime. the physical evidence was not the only element working against Robinson. Surveillance cameras captured movements near the rooftop entrance that matched his build and gait. While the footage was not crystal clear, it aligned closely enough with Robinson's profile to raise suspicions. Investigators also traced his digital footprint in the hours leading up to the crime. Cell phone records, geolocation data, and other online markers placed him in the vicinity at the exact time of the shooting, corroborating the physical trail of evidence left behind. Delving deeper, authorities turned their attention to Robinson's online behavior. His social media activity and private messages revealed an undercurrent of hostility directed toward Kirk, the victim. Posts dripping with resentment, late-night rants, and private conversations hinted at long, simmering anger that may have escalated into planning. Though no single message outlined a step-by-step blueprint for the crime, the overall pattern painted a portrait of a man increasingly obsessed and fixated on retaliation. Despite this mounting evidence, Robinson himself remained unmoved during questioning. He offered no admission, no attempt to explain the incriminating discoveries, and no effort to redirect suspicion. His silence frustrated investigators who sought to understand not only the how, but also the why behind the crime. With no confession and no cooperation, authorities relied on the hard facts, DNA, surveillance, and digital evidence, to build their case. Ultimately, Robinson was arrested and held without bail, leaving lingering questions about his true motives unanswered, even as the evidence against him appeared overwhelming. Possible motive, radicalization, warning signs. As authorities dug deeper, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Robinson had shown signs of radicalization over time. Family members noted his detachment whenever political topics were raised. Friends described him as increasingly isolated. His online behavior suggested not only an obsession with Charlie Kirk, but a broader resentment toward conservative voices. Some digital posts hinted at violence. Others reflected mocking humor that aligned with the bizarre engravings on the bullet casings. But what exactly drove him to take action? That remains unclear. Was it ideology alone? Was it personal frustration turned outward? Was it a blend of internet culture, alienation, and anger? The warning signs were present, but they had gone unnoticed or unreported. Robinson's case highlighted how easily isolation and radicalization can fester in the shadows, eventually exploding into real-world violence. Reactions from public and officials. The news of Charlie Kirk's death spread like wildfire, and the reactions were immediate and polarizing. Leaders from across the political spectrum condemned the killing. Prominent figures offered statements of grief and outrage. Some praised Kirk's courage in defending his beliefs, others focused on the broader issue of political violence. On the right, many blamed left-leaning rhetoric for creating a climate that fueled the attack. On the left, some warned against quick political blame, urging instead a focus on the dangers of extremism itself. The media became a battleground of interpretation. Some outlets emphasized the risks of radicalization. Others highlighted concerns about security at public events. Social media exploded with debate. Hashtags trended. Supporters mourned. Critics clashed. A few extremists even celebrated, sparking outrage. The reactions underscored how divided America has become, with even tragedy unable to unite but instead fueling further discord. Aftermath and consequences. The aftermath of the killing was heavy and wide-reaching. Memorials were held across the country. Tributes poured in from supporters and allies. Events were canceled, speeches postponed, and movements paused in shock. But the tragedy also sparked intense scrutiny. How was a sniper able to access a rooftop on a college campus undetected? Were there failures in security planning? Could the attack have been prevented? Universities across the country began reassessing safety protocols. Social media, meanwhile, became both a place of mourning and a battlefield of anger. Videos of the shooting circulated online, provoking debates, fueling conspiracies, and sometimes even becoming tools for mockery. Some individuals who posted celebratory messages faced real-world consequences, including job losses and public backlash. The shooting not only took Kirk's life, but also reshaped the conversation about free speech, safety, and political violence in the United States. Legal proceedings and status of suspect. As of now, Robinson is being held without bail in Utah County Jail. He is under special watch as authorities prepare to file charges of aggravated murder and other related counts. His lack of cooperation has slowed the process of understanding his exact motives. Prosecutors are assembling a case built heavily on physical evidence, digital trails, and witness testimony. The trial, when it comes, is expected to be one of the most closely watched in recent memory. Legal experts debate how his defense team will approach the case. Will they argue insanity? Will they focus on procedural issues? Or will Robinson remain silent throughout? The justice system is moving forward, but with it comes the possibility of more division. Regardless of the outcome, the trial will reopen wounds and force the nation to relive the tragedy. Broader implications. The killing of Charlie Kirk is not just about one man or one shooter. It is a symbol of something larger: the state of America's political and cultural climate. Political polarization has reached a level where violence is no longer unimaginable. If a public speaker can be assassinated in broad daylight in front of thousands, then the safety of open discourse itself is in danger. Universities, once bastions of debate, now face pressure to increase security measures, which may in turn restrict openness. The case also highlights how online radicalization is evolving. The blending of internet memes, gaming references, and ideology is creating new forms of extremism. Mental health concerns intersect with digital isolation and political anger. The line between protected speech and dangerous rhetoric is becoming harder to define. This tragedy forces society to ask, how do we balance freedom with safety? How do we protect debate without creating fortresses around ideas? These are not easy questions, but they cannot be avoided. Imagine for a moment that you are sitting in that crowd. You have come either to cheer Kirk or to challenge him. You are listening to a heated exchange about mass shootings, a subject already filled with emotion. Then, in an instant, a loud crack echoes through the air. You see Kirk fall, you see blood spreading across his shirt. People scream. You look around, not knowing if more shots are coming. You wonder whether you will survive. In that moment, politics does not matter. Beliefs do not matter. What matters is fear, chaos, and survival. That is what the audience lived through. That is what America must now confront. If you are unsettled just imagining it, remember that thousands lived it. The question we are left with is not only how this happened, but whether it will happen again if nothing changes. Unanswered questions. Despite the investigation, many questions remain unanswered. What was Robinson's exact motive? Was it purely political hatred, or something more personal? Did anyone else know of his plans? Did online communities see warning signs and fail to act? Could campus security have done more to prevent the shooting? Were there lapses in preparation? What about Robinson's mental health? Was he suffering from untreated conditions that pushed him toward violence? These unanswered questions weigh heavily on the investigation, the families involved, and the nation. They remind us that behind every act of violence lies a complex web of factors: ideology, isolation, opportunity, and failure. Until those questions are answered, closure will remain out of reach. What society must do? From this tragedy, there are lessons that must be learned. Event security must be strengthened, especially when controversial figures are speaking. Venues must assess not only crowd control but rooftops, perimeters, and surveillance blind spots. Mental health resources must be made more accessible, with an emphasis on early intervention and stigma reduction. Families, educators, and communities must recognize warning signs of radicalization. Online extremism must be monitored, not to police opinions, but to act when rhetoric crosses into threats. Society must also relearn how to engage in civil dialogue. Political opponents are not enemies. Disagreement is not justification for dehumanization. Hate speech and violent threats are not debate. And finally, misinformation must be fought with speed and accuracy. In the hours after the shooting, false stories circulated, some targeting innocent groups. That misinformation caused further division and harmed people who had no connection to the crime. Society must act quickly to prevent lies from compounding tragedy. The death of Charlie Kirk is tragic. It is shocking. It forces the nation to confront uncomfortable truths about division, anger, and responsibility. His voice is now silenced, but the echoes of his death are speaking loudly. The questions raised, who is responsible, how did it come to this, and what does it mean for our future, cannot be ignored. If democracy is not safe for debate, then democracy itself is in danger. If speakers cannot feel safe, if campuses cannot protect their guests, if anger overtakes reason, then the foundation of civil society crumbles. The tragedy of Charlie Kirk's death is more than a story about one man. It is a mirror held up to America, reflecting what we are and warning what we may become. As you reflect on this story, consider your own role. Does free speech matter more than safety? Or is safety the condition without which free speech cannot exist? What is your responsibility in preventing hatred from turning into violence? Could you recognize when someone is becoming radicalized? Would you have the courage to speak up? Would you take steps to help? Each of us has a role to play in ensuring that tragedies like this do not happen again. The story of Charlie Kirk's death is not just about loss, but about the choices we must make moving forward. If we fail to learn, if we fail to act, then silence will win by default. But if we learn, if we commit to change, then perhaps his death will not be in vain.